Hey guys, welcome back to Paulies Sleepers. Week 15 DraftKings tournament plays. I'm your host, Paul Lundgaard. Thanks for joining in. Our season is kind of winding down to a close. We have this week, and then we have week 16, and then we're done. Week 17 is going to have a lot of backup players. A lot of the Sharks love week 17, and they think that there's a lot of money to be had there. I just don't want to mess with it. Next week is my finals in 2 of my 3 leagues for the trophies in my season-long leagues. It's the last week where, all the starters are going to be definitive. In week 17, a lot of the teams, play weird players. You don't even know these guys. That's why most fantasy football season-long leagues end week 16. If you're in a league that goes to week 17, you got to get them to change that. That's bogus, because the good teams will bench their good players, and then you have a good team, and you can't play your players. So that's why we're going to be done next week. Hopefully we'll be able to do a group video with Jackson and Jeremy, because Jeremy will be in town, and we want to do a kind of a Christmas finale. So that's in the works. Also, this week, Jackson is going to do a separate video with him and Jeremy's cash game plays. I know I said I'm going to transition to cash. I've been trying to do it. I mean, I've got a problem, guys. I really like playing these GPPs. I see some money out there this week, so this is all going to be GPPs. I'm not ready to make the switch yet. I know I keep saying it, but I'm just I can't do it yet. So one thing I want to talk about first is I had an interesting listener question this week from West 12 Burke. I think he's a subscriber too. Thanks for your question, man. It was kind of a 2-part question. It was one, he wanted to stack Cam Newton with Christian McCaffrey this week. Wanted to know my thoughts on that. And the second part of it was he's been consistently scoring between 135 and 180 points, doing well, but what resources are we using that could get him over the next hump? What websites are we going to? Where are we getting this information? So very good question. Thank you. I answered the question that, I like Jonathan Stewart better this week than Christian McCaffrey because of his price and because he's had 5 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. He's $2,000 cheaper than McCaffrey, and we've kind of been fading McCaffrey the last few weeks because he's had a shoulder injury. He's a little guy, and he's $6,000. I didn't want to pay up for him. Now he's practiced all week, and Aaron Rodgers is going to play, so I think this game could shoot. I just wanted to, I responded earlier and told him, go ahead and play your Christian McCaffrey Cam stack because you're going to hate me if I get you off this play. And I think it's a better play. I'm still going to stick with Jonathan Stewart. I also answered that I would rather stack Cam with Funchess, but Funchess has been questionable all week. I don't know what's going on there. So I'm not going to do that play, but I still do like Stewart. And then the second part of the question is, where are we going for our information? Now, there was a guy from Fanshare Sports that chimed in that had some interesting information about ownership. And I looked into these guys, and I've been tweeting with him and chatting with him. And what these guys are doing is trying to determine ownership throughout the week so we can make our decisions based on ownership. And what they do is they use raw data to decide when a player's name gets clicked on, when a player's name gets typed into a search bar to try and determine their ownership percentage, which is gold in this daily fantasy football format. I want to look more at what they're doing and definitely use this information. So thanks to Fanshare Sports for getting involved. I also look at Football Outsiders for some good splits. And I told West to go there. I listen to the Fantasy Footballers podcast. They also have a daily podcast they do on Fridays and some excellent content. Football Guys does a good weekly video. And if you subscribe to their email, they email up-to-the-minute injury updates every day. And that's something we want to look at is injuries. We pay big attention to this. So that's where I get my injury information from is Football Guys. Fantasy Labs is a great place you could go that uses some geeked up next-gen stats, and that's a place that Jeremy turned me on to. Pro Football Focus is what Jackson and I use for our wide receiver cornerback matchups. Now, there's an article that gives like the top 3 and then the worst 3 matchups. that's free content. But to click on the chart that has the actual like every matchup, and you can see the pre-snap lineup position, you can sort it by speed differential, height differential, yards separation, air yards. It's a really, really good tool. That's paid content. And it's too late in the season to do it now, but next year I would definitely recommend spending. At the beginning of the year, I think it's like $19.95, and that's excellent information. There's lots of other articles that you can get to too. They talk about season-long, FanDuel and DraftKings and Draft, Yahoo, all formats. They're really great. I listened to the Roto Grinders video. They're very, very good. And Adam Silva is on there, and he's also on some other stuff too. Anytime Adam Silva is talking, you should listen. I think he thinks a lot like me. I'm not saying I'm as good as him, but I like when at the beginning of the week I talk about guys, and then on Friday or Saturday it's the same guys he's talking about. And lately he's been on the same guys that we've been on, which is good. That makes me feel good about my picks. And Adam Silva is kind of like, if you've ever seen Casino, and Robert De Niro was like the handicapper, professional bettor, and there's a line in that movie that they talk about when he makes a bet, the Vegas lines move on that game. That's how much influence he has. That's how Adam Silva is. When he mentions a player's name, his ownership goes up or down according to what he's saying about the guy. So that's some good content too. So I know that's a long answer, but it was a good question that deserved a long answer. So 3 running backs this week. We're going to try and squeeze into as many lineups as we can. I think it's a good strategy later in the year because these guys are going to have guaranteed volume. I think teams are going to try and grind it out and run out more. If you look at the history of the NFL, traditionally there are more running backs doing damage at the end of the year because a lot of the wide receivers are beat up. Coaches are trying to run out the clock, give their defense a rest up for the playoffs, especially on some of these high-powered teams. We're going to see a lot more running. So we're going to want to do 3 running backs when possible. And then we're going to want to trust our first take. I did my first take on Monday this week, and it got a lot of views. And I think my biggest problem last week was I was on Russell Wilson, and I allowed the DFS community to get me off of him. Nobody said to play this guy. And he had a big red 1 next to his name for his matchup at Jacksonville. My thought was, well, he's only $6,200. This is a $7,500 play, and this guy's going to get it done. He's been getting it done all year. It kind of reminds me of when Deshaun Watson traveled to Seattle earlier in the year, and people faded him, and we still played him. You got to trust guys in bad matchups, and Russell Wilson is setting like an NFL record for, I think 85% of the team's points have flown through him. He's running the ball in or he's passing it to the guy scoring, and that's because they have no running game. So I got off that play. I didn't end up playing him, and it was a smash play. He had 4 total touchdowns. So our first take this week was DeShone Kizer, Blake Bortles, Ben Roethlisberger, and Cam Newton. Now, because of the Devin Funchess situation, I'm off of Cam, and because Ben Roethlisberger is $300 more, and I think he has a great opportunity. Like I say every week, no, Tom Brady's not a bad play, but he's like $1,000 more than Ben, and for that money, I want a 30-point potential. Tom's only done that twice this year, and Ben's done it twice in the last 3 weeks. So I think his, especially playing at home, and if you listen to anything about fantasy football, everyone knows that Ben plays better at home. And then look at what Miami did to New England last week. Jay Cutler, 3 touchdowns. Jarvis Landry, 2 touchdowns. And their top running back, Kenyon Drake, 180 all-purpose yards. So if that's Ben and Antonio Brown and Kenyon Drake, and Le'Veon Bell, yeah, it's a lot more pricey, but I think that's just guaranteed production. So we've got 1 stack with all 3 of them. We also have 11 lineups we're giving up, and 8 of the lineups have either Bell or Brown. I think you're going to need one of those guys this week. And like I said, one of them has both of them. We're also doing the Bortles stack with Kamara and Ingram and the Saints D. We did that one a couple times earlier this year, and it smashed. Bryce Petty is the quarterback for the Jets, traveling to New Orleans this week. Muhammad Wilkerson is not traveling with the team, which he's big on their pass rush. That's going to give Drew Brees more time to pass. But I think this is going to be a grinded out, big-time running back play because they're not going to have to throw the ball much against the Jets. I don't see Bryce Petty getting it done. These are the first takes that we're going to stick with that we like. So Aaron Rodgers coming back this week. Jordy Nelson's priced way up, and he's probably a good play. Devontae Adams is priced up too, and he's been doing well. Not just with Huntley throwing the ball. I mean, he had 12 touchdowns last year with Aaron Rodgers throwing on the ball. But I like Randall Cobb this week because the first 4 weeks, he got double digits every week. I think Aaron Rodgers may be a little hesitant to throw the ball downfield. I think he might be dumping the ball off a little bit more, and Randall Cobb will benefit from that. So I think in a PPR format, he's a great play too. So another thing I was going to say is if you're feeling a play like West 12 Burke, if you're feeling a play, do it. Jeremy likes Nelson Aguilar this week, and I tried to get him off him, and then I said, you know what, if you like the play, play it. I mean, the way I looked at it was, Nelson Aguilar benefited a lot from Carson Wentz because when he kind of calls the audible during the play and tells Nelson, like, hey, go over there and throws it to him, he's catching those balls and then also his deep balls. But is he a bad play? No, because he's playing in the middle of the field. Nick Foles might need someone to dump the ball off too quickly other than Zach Ertz. So I've got Aguilar in here on one of these. Jeremy talked me into him, and I don't think it's a bad play. But I guess, if you're feeling a guy, just play him. Play the guys that you like. So I'm going to give out these lineups. If there's a guy that you don't like, I'm sure there's somebody in his price range that you could sub in. And then see how it worked out. See if my guy did better than your guy. If they did, leave a comment and say, hey, you know what? You missed on Carlos Hyde this week. He was a great play. He got me so many points. There's a core group that we're playing like we usually do, and we're mixing and matching, and it's been doing well for us. There's a lot of ways to get there, is another way. You can play Case Keenum this week and probably do well. You could play Joe Flacco this week and probably do well. It all depends on how you construct the rest of that lineup. I mean, getting to realize the quarterback has probably the least effect of anything. So let's get out these lineups here. I'm gonna flash them here in a second, but let's just go through them. We're doing 3 lineups with Kaiser, and we've tried to mix it up really well. I think Josh Gordon is a steal this week at 6,800. Look what Antonio Brown did to the Ravens defense last week. He got like 218 yards, and they don't have Jimmy Smith now. So the Ravens have allowed a really low, like 8 plays of 30 yards or more through the air this year, which is low, but 5 of them have come in the last 6 quarters since Jimmy Smith has went down. And we talked about Jimmy Smith going down last week. It's going to make a big effect on this team. The secondary is not as good with them. The whole team's not as good with them. So Josh Gordon, is he as good as Antonio Brown? Yeah, almost. I mean, his quarterback isn't as good, but you've got a team that's giving up the deep ball, and you've got a guy in DeShone Kizer that is top 5 in the league and throwing a deep ball. So it's a good play. So we're doing one with Kizer to Gordon. We're doing one with Kizer to Coleman because Corey Coleman actually outscored Josh Gordon last week. He's $2,400 cheaper. Kizer obviously likes this kid. He's fast. He's got great hands. He makes some unbelievable sideline plays, and he's cheap. And then we're doing one lineup with both of them. I think we're going to do great here. Kenyon Drake is in 2 of these lineups. That Miami offense is way different with him in there. It's flowing through him. He's like an Alvin Kamara Jr. They've got it together. I think it's opening up plays on their defense too. I mean, their offense is giving the defense rest. I think it's giving the defense more of the balls to run some more exotic blitzes. They were doing some weird stuff last week. I talked about it in my video on Monday. They were moving Ndamukong Suh out to a defensive end, and they were moving Cameron Jordan out in a one-hand down, like linebacker stance off the line and having him rush up the middle. They were really messing with Tom's head. So I think that they could definitely mess with whoever's throwing the ball in Buffalo this week. It looks like it's going to be Tyrod Taylor. If he ends up going out of that game because he's been hurt, Nathan Peterman has a concussion, so it would be the third string guy, whoever that is. This is a great opportunity for Miami's D, and they're only 2,700, so we're playing a lot of Miami's D, and we're looking to pair them with Drake whenever we can. Almost, I think every one of these Ds is paired with a running back, and that's a stack I talked about back in week 1. The strategy here is if the defense does what it's supposed to do and gets the other team off the field and gets the ball back into the offense's hands through a turnover or a turnover on downs, the first person to touch the ball is probably that running back. So there's a great correlation there. We've got Jonathan Stewart and Isaiah Crowell are the cheap running backs we like this week, both at 4,100. Kind of breaking my rule a little bit here because they're not pass-catching running backs, and this is a pass-catching format, but they've been getting more and more work, 15, 17, 20 touches for these guys. Stewart has 5 touchdowns in 3 weeks, like I said. He's a great play. I think that game will shoot out, and there'll be lots of opportunities. Green Bay's defense sucks. The Ravens' defense going against Cleveland is not the same. I think that they'll give it up too. So I think that's a good play. We've got Gronk in 2 of these. Gronk smash. He has 8 career touchdowns in 5 games versus Buffalo. That's all you need to say. Brandon LaFell's in 1 of these. I'm thinking if Xavier Rhodes shuts down AJ Green, that Brandon LaFell might get some extra work. His usage has been pretty solid with 5 or 6 or 7 targets. He's really cheap. So, guys, these are plays where they might get 6 or 7 or 8 points. It's not going to hurt us because it's allowing to load up on other players. Speaking of cheap guys, Keenan Cole has been another guy for Jacksonville that has been blowing up, and we're going to like him in our Bortles play too. So another reason why we like Bortles this week is Leonard Fournette is banged up with a quad. This is a new injury. If there's no Leonard Fournette or if he's limited, I think Blake Bortles will have to throw. Also, Houston is very good against the run, so I'm not concerned about playing Fournette, even if he plays, or any of the other guys there, because TJ Yeldon, Chris Ivory, those guys aren't good plays against Houston. I think no matter what the situation is, Bortles is ready to throw the ball. He made a statement last week that, hey, get used to us scoring points, get used to us winning games. He's getting confidence. He also has D.D. Westbrook. Now, some of these guys I'm mentioning, guys, when you're drafting for your season longs next year, guys that kind of emerge at the end of the year are always on my radar for my season longs. And guys like Alex Collins in Baltimore, the offense is running through him. Kenyon Drake, D.D. Westbrook. These are guys I'm going to look to draft next year. And I hope my opponent coaches aren't watching this, but I know they are. The Dolphins D, we're pairing the Saints D with Alvin Kamara in 1 of these. Todd Gurley's always a great play. He's just constant guaranteed production. We've got Tyler Lockett a little bit here because that Rams-Seattle game will shoot out. So this is the Kaiser stacks. There's 3 of them. I think they're all great plays. Mix and match if you want. I've really taken the time to mix these lineups so they're scattered. And we've got 1 with Coleman, 1 stacked with Josh Gordon, and 1 with both of them. All right? So the next stacks are Russell Wilson. We've got 3 of these too. In 1 of these, we've got him naked without any of his other players stacked, because Russell Wilson, you never know who he's going to throw to. It might be Tyler Lockett. It might be Paul Richardson. It might be Jimmy Graham. It wasn't Jimmy Graham last week. We know that because he got 0. But then he'll run the ball a bunch too, and he'll run it in. So if you want to do a big stack with him, that's not really the guy to stack. Having said that, we did stack him with Paul Richardson in 1. And Paul Richardson was an original Paulies Sleeper, week 1. Came out and got 10 points that week. 8 points the next week, 9 points the next week. He was really cheap. He did well for us. And now he's emerging, and he's actually leading the team in touchdowns for wide receivers. And he's really cheap this week at 4,100. So I like the correlation there. I think if he gets that 8 or 10 or 12 points, that's not going to hurt us. The other one, we paired him with Tyler Lockett. He's an explosive big play guy. I mean, this is going to be a big, big game. I've stacked him with Lockett, and I've stacked Wilson with Richardson, and then I've played him naked. Ben Watson is going to show up a lot here on some of these. I was on Vernon Davis, and you know that I liked Vernon Davis earlier in the year, but their offensive line, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, has gotten horrible. He's had to block more. His play is going down. That whole team is going down the tubes. Ben Watson is $100 cheaper than Vernon Davis. He had his best game against Cleveland earlier this year, 8 for 91, and Cleveland is like 30th DVOA against tight ends. So it's a great play. Will it get 0 or 2 or 4? Yes, maybe. That's been the nature of tight ends lately. That's why in a lot of these I'm not looking to pay a bunch for tight end unless I go up to Gronk. There is one other play that we like. I'll get to that in a minute. We've got Antonio Brown. We've got Jay Ajayi stacked with the Eagles. Ajayi has been getting more and more touches. I think they're not going to ask Nick Foles to do much. The Giants suck. I think this is going to be a lot of running. I mean, they do have Clement. They do have LeGarrette Blount. But I think this is Ajayi's team. He's only 5K. And he showed us last year 3 times that he's capable of a 200-yard game. I think he could easily get 150 here and be a big play for us. We're stacking him with the Eagles. We're stacking Alvin Kamara with the Saints. He's back from his concussion. We don't need to talk about him that much. I know I've been talking about him all year long. He's just an explosive player. If you haven't watched him play, you know, just watch him play a game. And it's just really exciting to watch. He'll line up as a wide receiver and run a post route. He'll jump over you. He'll jump through you. See, I said I wasn't going to talk about him. Now I'm talking about him. He just gets me that excited. Kenyon Drake with the Dolphins D here is a good play, and Alex Collins is in a couple of these. We've already talked about him. He's a great play this week at 5K. So here's the Wilson stacks. Make sure I get them up here so you can see them. I think these are mixed up real good too. I think these will be good plays. You can pause the screen, write them down later. Okay, the last one is Blake Bortles, or I'm sorry, the third one is Blake Bortles. We do 2 with him. Pairing him, we've got Goodwin from the Niners in this one. I really wish I had more Goodwin this week. He's just a really weird price at $6,000. I think he's worth it, but he just didn't fit into my pricing structure. So on this one, we went Goodwin and Cooper Kupp, and that kind of changed the pricing structure a little bit and made a different lineup. I think it's good. We also have Kerwin Williams in this lineup. He's the starter for Arizona at the aforementioned Redskins, who I think is just going down the tubes. They're not good against the run. Adrian Peterson was placed on IR this week, so hopefully Williams is pumped up knowing that this is his team now and possibly his team of the future. I mean, how much does Adrian Peterson have left? That's got to be motivation for this guy. Anybody else? Randall Cobb, like I talked about earlier, is in one of these. Julius Thomas we're using as a cheap tight end in this one. He's got a good matchup this week against Buffalo. They're not good against tight ends, and he's cheap. He's been getting used a lot. And then on this one, we've got the Bortles stack with Ingram and Kamara with the Saints D. This could be a 100-point play. It was last time. We're going to have to pay for it this time, but I think it's worth it. There's a little less to talk about as we go on because these players have been mentioned already. So there's our Bortles stack. I hope you guys can see this well. Alvin Kamara, AK-41. And Ben Roethlisberger was on our first take this week. Like I said before, I mean, look at what Cutler and Landry and Drake did against New England. Their defense was bad. It got a little better. It's bad again now. I think this game will shoot out. I want to get as many Steelers in my lineups as I can. I don't really trust, playing Chris Hogan or Cook or, you know, Rex Burkhead. I mean, I know these guys are good plays, but I just don't feel as good about them as I do about the Steelers. I think all those guys will play well, but that's fine. If New England, you know, smashes and runs up the score, all these Steelers will do great too. So don't worry about there not being any New England players here. We're fading New England for a reason. It's because we like Pittsburgh's opportunity to score even better. So Isaiah Crowell makes an appearance here. Latavius Murray makes an appearance here with the Vikings D. I think the Vikings D will be a great play at home versus Cincy. They just gave up against the Bears last week. I think they're done. Lat Murray has been getting a ton of usage. Also, Kyle Rudolph is out this week for the Vikings. If you want a flyer, they have a guy named Watson that's going to be starting for as a tight end this week if he clears concussion protocol. They might not have any tight ends this week. This is really weird. They might have to sign somebody because Rudolph is out, his backup is out with a shoulder, and then the third string guy has to clear concussion protocol. If Watson clears, he's 2,500 and he's caught all 5 of his targets this year. Maybe worth a flyer. I'll see if I'm going to do it. He's not in any of these. Ricky Seals-Jones makes an appearance here because Arizona, they're playing Washington. They funnel to the middle. Their corners are really good, but their middle of the field is open. I like Seals-Jones. He's bare minimum. It's $3,000. Danny Amendola makes an appearance here at $5,000. I think he's a good way to get a little bit of exposure to New England. Juju Smith-Schuster makes an appearance here. So in one of these stacks, we've got Ben with Bell and no Antonio Brown. So I wanted exposure to Schuster here. I've got an asterisk because check his hamstring. If he doesn't play, sub in Rashard Matthews from Tennessee. That's about it here. One of these stacks has Ben with Bell and Brown. Like I said I was going to do triple Bs. One has Ben with Brown and one has Ben with Bell. Hopefully you guys can see that. Pause the screen if you have to. And that's it. I know we ran a little long, but this is a big week, and I hope you guys make some money. Look for Jackson's cash lineup video that he'll do probably tomorrow night. And then, as always, on Sunday, very early, I will post a video if I think there's any injury-related news, and definitely if there's any of these guys we need to switch out. If I don't post a video, the one thing you'll want to look at is Juju Smith-Schuster's status. I think he's going to play. His hamstring was bothering him a few weeks ago. He sat out practice. He still played, and he did fine. He was suspended last week for that suplex that he did on Vontaze Burfict and then stood over him like Muhammad Ali. It was kind of really nasty and bad form, Juju. Bad boy. Anyway, have a good week, and we'll talk to you before Christmas, but go out there and get your shopping done, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.